Welcome back, everybody, to our special coverage of the Fed decision live from Washington. Another quarter-point hike, widely expected, despite the collapse of First Republic Bank earlier this week, second largest bank failure in U.S. history. Just a few days ago, that happened, of course. Not to mention a potential U.S. debt default, leading economic indicators flashing signs of a slowdown. Joining us now to discuss all of this and more, Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, member of both the Senate Banking and Appropriations Committee, also Judiciary Committee. You are a busy fellow. In about a half hour's time, Elizabeth Warren is going to come and sit in exactly that chair, and she is going to say, I suspect, that the Fed just got it wrong by raising interest rates by a quarter point. Would you agree with her or disagree with her?
I would disagree. Look, Elizabeth is whip smart, but we don't agree on the economics. Forget the politics. We don't agree on the economics of this. To tame inflation, we're going to have to raise interest rates. We would not have to raise them as high as I've explained or tried to explain to Elizabeth if Congress would reduce the rate of growth of spending and debt accumulation. That's not just Kennedy saying that, that's history. Since 1950, we've had 10 periods of disinflation. Where it was too high, we got it down. We never succeeded without attacking the problem on both the monetary side or the fiscal side. So in effect, what I'm saying is that if you vote against reducing the rate of growth of spending and debt accumulation, you are voting for higher interest rates. Powell's going to have to raise rates much higher than he normally would have if Congress would slow the stimulus of spending.
But there is little appetite. Apart on the GOP side, there's an appetite for cutting spending, but it's not going to go through the Senate.
Talk a good game.
They talk a good game,
but for a lot of my Republican colleagues, you know, it's like going to heaven. They all want to go, but they don't want to take the trip right now. They want to wait a while. And sure, there's a lot of hypocrisy, but you can't have it both ways. Look, Powell's going to get inflation down. He may have to raise rates as high as 8 to 10%, and I won't take the time now, but I can explain to you why that's realistic. But the more we can do on the spending side to help Powell on his side, the less he's going to have to raise interest rates. And keep in mind, this is not just a sterile statistic. We're talking about putting people out of work.
Sure.
This is flesh and bones here.
No, it's a great point, especially go back to look at 2021, you know, when you had both fiscal and monetary going full blast, and that's how you get to a 9% CPI.
You're right, and we lose sight of that.
I don't want to ask you about this, but I have to.
Ask me anything you want to ask me.
Forcing me to. The debt ceiling, even if you want to force people to restrain spending for all of the good reasons that you cited, is the debt ceiling showdown really what the economy needs right now?
Well, I hope we can avoid it. I'm not going to vote, ultimately, not to pay America's debt. Now, look, I didn't vote for a lot of this debt, but it was incurred lawfully, and I'm not going to vote to default. But you can have that position and at the same time understand the way that the debt ceiling and inflation are inextricably linked through spending. And I mean, President Biden, you don't have to be Mensa material to figure all this out. I mean, President Biden said forever the Republicans don't have a plan. Now we have a plan. Now it's time for him to sit down with McCarthy and have an adult discussion about how you allocate scarce resources and reduce inflation. And I don't think you can do it without reducing the rate of growth of spending.
So the Speaker and the President will meet next week and presumably begin some of this conversation. How would you break the logjam that is built around this idea that the Democrats want a so-called clean debt ceiling release or change tied to nothing? In terms of spending cuts, how do you break that Gordian knot?
Well, let me say first, nothing's going to happen in the Senate. I can tell you, they're not 60 votes either way. We're waiting to see the House of what's going to happen with the House and the President. I think it's clear that the House is going to have to give some, but the President's going to have to give some. I mean, if he thinks that McCarthy and the Republicans in the House are just going to agree to raise the debt ceiling without slowing the rate of growth of spending, he's living in la la land.
What are the hints? What are the verbal and language hints that we all need to be watching for as a sign that some progress is being made? What language on both sides tells us, oh, they talked about this, that means there's some negotiation towards the deal?
I don't know exactly the hint. I think McCarthy will be pretty candid. Now, he's already told me and others he's not going to negotiate this deal in the press. But I think Kevin will be very, very frank. The president will have his economic advisors around him. I just don't know. Maybe President Biden thinks that the House will blink. I don't. You know,
he got his plan through with 2 votes, just 2 votes, and his job is in the balance here, because if he alienates by what I guess we'd call improvident deal making, if he alienates part of the base of his party, they'll kick him out, right?
Well, I was pretty impressed with the job that the speaker did. I got to tell you, we all watched his election. I went through 16, 17 ballots. I was impressed that he got anything through.
Let me ask you this, Senator. Are you having any banks in Louisiana or those who feel like they have your ear, are they calling you and saying, hey, it's really bad here and you got to get them to, to back what? Or other constituents? We had the CFO Council event here at CNBC a couple days ago, and they were told, the CFOs were told, you want to tell your senators, your congressmen, that this slowdown is coming. Tell them you're worried about it. Tell them what the Fed or what Congress needs to do. I mean, what are you hearing from your constituents about? I understand what you're saying about inflation, but the banking problems there and imminent signs of a slowdown.
Let me tell you about the banking problem, in my opinion, and I sit on the banking committee. Let's take Silicon Valley Bank and First Republic. I don't know whether it was the stupidity of management or the greed of management or the hubris of management, but 75, maybe 85, 90% of that problem was one or all 3, okay? They made a bet without hedging the bet. You didn't have to be at the time. You didn't have to be Einstein's cousin to see the Federal Reserve was going to raise interest rates. I mean, duh. They not only did it in increments, but they said they were going to do it. And these 2 banks were sitting on assets. In one case, long bonds. In another case, cheap, by the bank standards, loans that were going to go down in value.
Let me just point out there were 31 banks that had negative tangible equity as of the 3rd quarter of last year.
Yes, but you're right. And there's about $600 billion out there in long bonds that are underwater that are held by banks. But banks also pay attention to their sources of funding and their deposit base.
But that's in motion now. How do we undo that? That motion is posing a threat.
Here's the risk. If it were not for the contagion, what we should have done with Silicon Valley and with First Republic is say to their management, look, you're both like a rock, only dumber, and we're going to let you fail. The reason we couldn't do that is because we live in a different world of instantaneous communication, and we would have had contagion.
Right. Quick final question, because I know we're over your time here. So do we need to raise the FDIC limit now, either broadly or just for payroll accounts or something, in order to put this now crisis in motion to an end?
That's a good question. I don't know. I wish I had a good answer. I don't know how I feel about it. I just know the world is different now with technology and the way we can communicate so quickly. And banks exist on the basis of trust. They're really just, don't take this the wrong way, sophisticated Ponzi schemes. And they work when everybody trusts each other. And you get on that iPhone and start sending text messages, and you have the herd panic and stampede. Anybody can go broke.
The speed of transmission is completely different.
It's breathtaking.
Senator Kennedy, thank you for being with us. Thank you for your candor.
This was fun.
Yeah, you bet it was fun. That was enjoyable.
Unless you're a banker, maybe.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, dumb as a rock.
They're not. They're dumb as a rock. They'll be okay.
And a Ponzi scheme.
The bankers will be okay.
Yeah, they usually are.
They usually are.
Senator Kennedy, thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up.